How's it going, everyone? You're watching Visual Intelligence, and welcome back to another very exciting tutorial. So today I'll be showing you how to make this gradient style modern kind of logo effect using Adobe Illustrator. Now before we begin, I would like to mention that this logo is not actually an original logo. It was heavily quote-unquote inspired by a free pick kind of asset in the free pick asset store. Now this is actually a premium file, so I'm not sure if you can get that for free, but I'll be having a link in the description if you want to get the logo that was inspired from, or copied, if you'd like to say that. So this logo falls into what we call a pictorial logo or a symbolic genre of logos. All these terms define a graphic-based design. Some iconic examples for that would be Apple, Twitter, Target, and so on. In contrast, there are wordmark and lettermark logos that are built around a letter of the brand name or the brand name itself, like you can see here in this article. I'll be linking this article by 99design.com, where you can see the differences between logo types. I think this is especially important for beginners to conform to one of the types of logos that are in this article, or any of the other articles for that matter, and this will prevent you from making mistakes in creating logos, mixing matching different styles and effects and things that don't actually work together well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with our logo. So the first thing I want to do is create a new document. And I can do that by hitting Control N on my keyboard, or I can go to File New like any other program. I will be using a 1000 by 1000 points or pixels document. I'll be using RGB because RGB usually, provides you with more overall colors. So yeah, let's hit Create, and this will create our document for us. Now before we begin, you might notice that everything in my document is white, regardless whether I am inside or outside my canvas, and that's because if you go to your preferences by hitting Ctrl K on your keyboard and then go into user interface, you can choose white as your canvas color. And what's cool about that is sometimes I like to have a big space to work with, and sometimes it's just a good idea to work here, and if I have the default background, I will not be able to do that very easily. So yeah, let's delete this and go back to our. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go to my rectangle tool, which you can go to by hitting M on your keyboard, or you can just click the rectangle in your tools panel. Next, I want to, by holding Alt, I want to click once, and then this dialog will pop up. Let's do 300 by 300. I would like to have a multiple of 3 for reasons I will discuss later on. Yeah, so that looks good. So the trick to make this kind of shape is actually to make it at an angle first, because this is obviously a lot easier. I mean, not obviously, but this is somehow easier to work with than this shape. And then in the end, we will rotate it 45 degrees and we'll be happy. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So in order to get this marker look, what we want to do is we want to make all the edges round except for one edge, and we'll round it just slightly. And let's go ahead and do that. To select edges of your rectangle, we need to go to your direct selection tool. You can go there by hitting A on your keyboard. It is also called the white arrow tool, and it is different than the normal arrow tool in that you can select individual points with the black arrow tool, but with the white arrow you can select points, lines individually, and so on, and that's exactly what we want to do. So we want to select the top 2 points, and you can see that they are selected because they are highlighted and these points are not. And then what we want to do is we want to hold Shift and then select the last one. So what you can notice is that we have these handles here, and these are new to Illustrator. They were first introduced in, I think, Adobe Illustrator CC something, So if you don't have that, there is another workaround, and that will be showing you in just a bit. But if you do, just click on them and drag until you can't drag anymore. And what will this do is it will round all the edges. And then we want to select the other edge and then just round it just a bit. And that's why I told you it's just easier to work with this shape to start with, and then later on we can rotate it. So if you don't have this round corner tool thing, what you can do is you can go to your ellipse tool. Make sure you have your smart guides selected, and this way it will just snap to one of the edges. And then we want to click once and then hold shift, and then holding shift will prevent us from doing this. Basically, we just want a perfect circle, and then we want to snap it to the other edge. So we want a circle that is exactly the size of the rectangle that we already have. So now that we have these two shapes, we can either use the shape builder tool or we can use the pathfinder tool, and then we can mix and match some of the parameters right here. So an easier way is obviously to just use the shape builder tool. So let's go ahead and do that. So if you go to the shape builder tool, if you click and drag, you can just join shapes together. And if you hit Alt and click, you can just delete the shapes, the extra shapes that we don't actually need. That actually looks good. We also want to round this edge. So what we can do now is you can go to our ellipse tool, click once, and just make, you know, just eyeball this one because it's not that important. We just want some roundness on the bottom basically, so we don't want to be too technical on that. And then we want to do the same thing for the extra edge right there, and then we want to delete this because we don't actually need it. All right, this actually looks kind of nice. So if you click on it, you can see it, we have the exact same shape, just with a slightly different execution. I wanted to show you guys this second method because some of you guys don't have access to Adobe Illustrator or prefer to use something else, and I just grew to respect other people's choices basically. So yeah, that's how you do it if you don't have the rounding feature from Illustrator. So the next thing we want to do is we want to go back to our ellipse tool by hitting L on our keyboard. So as you can see, if we hover over this shape, the smart guides actually are nice enough to show us the center and snap our mouse to it. So that's actually pretty nice. So once it says center, what we want to do is we want to hold Alt and then click once, and this window will pop up. So remember what I told you about having the size of this first shape to be a multiple of 3. So and we picked 300. So now what we want to do is we want to have the third of that, so that's 100. And what we did right there is we just made sure that this size, and this size are the same, which is kind of a nice thing for the eye to look at, I guess. Maybe it's not exactly what you want, and it's definitely not what we did for this one logo, but we're flexible. We can change that if we don't like it. So the next thing we want to do is we want to select both, and then we want to go to our Pathfinder tool. If you don't have that, you can go to Window Pathfinder, and we want to hit Subtract, or whatever it says, minus front. So this is good. Next thing we want to do is we want to go back to our ellipse tool. So there are a lot of circles going on in this one shape. So, and then what we want to do is we want to go to the leftmost center edge, and then we want to click and drag until our cursor snaps into the center. As you can see, it shows us a line to the center, and that's where we know we're right. And then we want to duplicate this once again. So what we want to do is we want to select both by hitting Shift, and then we want to drag them until they snap in the center of our shape. You must be wondering what are we doing right now, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to create this one shape right here. So now what we want to do is we want to select this outer shape. Now if we go to our black arrow tool, it will select everything, and that's obviously not what we want. And if we go to the white arrow tool, we'll need to select every point by itself, and that's also not what we want. But another tricky way to do it is if you hold Alt and then select this, it will select everything that is connected to it. So this way we selected this whole shape all together at once without having to select the center part, of course. And then now what we want to do is we want to hit Control C, and then we want to click away, and then we want to do Control F, and this will paste it in place. And then now we want to have the fill to be none, just so that we can see the first two shapes that we just created. And then we want to select these two circles, and now it's time to use the actual shape builder again. So we don't want these two shapes, so we can delete them by holding Alt on our keyboard, and then we want to merge these together. And just like that, we have our very beautiful type of logo. So all we need to do now is give it some color, and we'll be good to go. So let's start with the basic shape here, right? So let's go and pick some nice bluish color to it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get rid of the stroke, and then we want to select a kind of a deep blue color, and then an even darker color on the other side. And so the color that we got right now is not exactly the most it's not the most attractive blue gradient. So we want to go to our first gradient. We want to make it a little bit warmer, maybe get rid of the green. So yeah, we just basically want a warmer side and then a darker side, or like a warmer and the colder side, or something like that. It's always a good idea to try and make one side dark without having to sacrifice the brightness, because what makes this logo good or nice to look at is the fact that it is actually a variation of beautiful and bright colors. So I like this color personally. Maybe we want to switch the sides a bit, and then we want to go back to the other one. And this side we want it to be slightly to the green side of the spectrum. And I think that looks pretty good. Maybe we want to go back to this color and make it a little, yeah, this actually looks good. Yeah, I don't want that much warmth in that other side. So these are the colors I picked: 710137 and 28122 if you want to copy the exact same colors, even though I will be uploading this project file. So if you want to just have the project file, you can do that as well. So for this second color, we want to do a more cyan kind of color, like from the sea. And as you can see, we're obviously not conforming with the previous iteration. So, and that's totally fine. I mean, we don't have to do that. We can just pick our own colors. I mean, a big part of why I want to do this logo series is because I think a lot of people have problems playing with colors, and I hope that some people get an intuition of why I'm picking certain colors, and from there they can pick their own beautiful colors, and they will not be afraid anymore to actually experiment with colors and things like that, because it is intimidating to a lot of people to pick colors. So yeah, so I went to the other shapes went to the stroke and then hit none, and then we want to do the exact same thing. We want to have a gradient here, and then for this time we want to go we want to go light. So for this one side, we want to go blue, you know, some nice baby blue color. And then for the other side, we want to go a little bit more cyan, right? Yeah. And this is always a good idea to do this kind of combination where you have one side kind of warm and the other side is a little bit cold. I just thought it just works nice that way. So yeah. So I do want to play a little bit with the gradients, and to do that we can select one shape, hit G on our keyboard, and then we can click and drag to play with the gradient a little bit and see what works best. So I want this area right here to be shaded because it makes more sense since it's in the background of this other shape. So, and then I want this shape to be brighter, and you know, so I want it to be brighter actually on the top, because it just makes more sense that way for our eye or whatever. So as you can see, I don't think that, you know, having a small circle here or doing whatever we did at first makes sense, and that's totally fine. We can change that, and in order to do that we can select we have to select this inner circle, and in order to do that we can just hold Alt and then select this circle, click and drag, and then now we have only the circle selected. If we hit V again or go to our selection tool, we can just play with the size a little bit, and that actually looks kind of more like I want it, so I'll stick with that for now. Another thing we can do is have a dark kind of background to work with. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just creating a rectangle here. It's no big deal. So we want a solid color, and then we want it to be a very deep dark blue color, and then we want to select it and then hit Control 2 on our keyboard, or we can go to our layers and then lock it. And this is something I realized that I never do. I never actually use the layers panel, and that's what most beginners in Illustrator have trouble with. We don't have to ever go to your layers panel unless you know what you're doing. So what I like to do is I like just keep it, you know, closed, and then I do all I do with keyboard shortcuts without having to know what's in my layers panel. I just need to know where my shape's at, which is very intuitive in Illustrator, so we don't have to worry about the layers. And that's lesson number 1 in Adobe Illustrator, I guess, especially for beginners. I mean, I know the importance of layers and whatnot, but I think it's just for beginners, it's just too overwhelming to have it in your layout without having to ever use it. So yeah, so we want to select the background and then hit Control 2, and this will lock it. So now we can no longer select it, as you can see in the layers panel as well. So now we have our basic shape, and it looks good. If you want this to be your logo, that's fine. But what we can also do is we can give some more detail to it. Like if you can see, we have this this highlight and shadow type of situation where it kind of looks 3D-ish, and let's go ahead and apply that to our logo. Another thing I realized is that this is much brighter than what we already have, and we can actually keep this if we want these colors, or we can go ahead and manipulate our own colors and see what works best for our logo. So let's try and make it a little bit, just a little bit lighter, and maybe that will be better for our purposes. Oh, yeah, that looks good. I mean, yeah, that's not bad. Oh yeah, maybe a little bit lighter actually. Let's go ahead and try a lighter color. Yeah, that looks pretty good in my opinion. So let's go ahead and add that more detail. So again, it's a little bit hard to work with it this way. So let's go ahead and rotate it once again. And this way we have access to our center very easily. So now we can go to where it says anchor, where it snaps you into the middle, and then we can hold Alt and Shift and then create a circle. You want to have it in the center, but it doesn't have to be exactly in the center. So now let's select our other shape, hit the shape builder tool, and then we want to get rid of our background. And make sure you don't have the third shape selected for this one step, because otherwise we'll have a little bit of a problem right there. And if you can see that may be what you actually want, but it's not what we want. So just make sure only the background and the new circle is selected, and then we want to get rid of the one circle in the middle right there. And then we want to select our light shape, and then hit Control Shift right square bracket, and this will bring it into the front. Or you can just right click and then arrange and bring to front. So yeah, that looks actually pretty good. I'm happy with that. So the next shape, and we will be dealing with the gradients in a little bit, but let's just create the other circle. So let's have it the same size actually. Let's see what this does. And then we want to have it start from this point. So go ahead and hit Control Y, and this will give us the outline look, which is more visible. So we want this circle to start exactly at this point. So what we can do is we can go to our white arrow tool. So while having all the shapes selected, all the circles selected, we can click one of the points and drag it into the other side. And you can see if we hit Shift, we will be locked into the x-axis, and then we can just release our mouse when it snaps. So that looks pretty good. Hit Control Y again, and let's give it this color instead this time. So now we want to hit Shift and select the other shape. We can go back to our shape builder tool, and then while holding Alt we can just click, and this will get rid of the extra stuff that we don't need. So now that we have all the shapes that we need, now we can just play around with the gradients a little bit and make sure we pick something that we actually like. So let's select both gradients of the same shape, and then let's do this, or let's do a gradient like this, and this will make the light side more on the top left, which looks kind of nice for me. You know, you can play around with whatever colors you want. You know, the idea is to just be creative. So now we want to select the smaller shape, and then we want to go to our gradient. You know, just play around a little bit with the gradient handler. This looks pretty good in my opinion. What you can actually also do is you can click on this shape and just play with the gradient again. So we want to get rid of this color, and to do that we need another handler or another anchor in this gradient. Let's do that, and then we want to get rid of this one by clicking and dragging it downwards. We want to basically have two handlers with the same color, and then one of them needs to be transparent. We can also have this shape selected, and then we can just dial the transparency a little bit down, and this actually looks perfect. Let's go ahead and deal with the other circle as well, and this one could actually be much simpler. So we want it to be a little bit lighter, or we just want to play with it basically until we find something that works for us. And this definitely does work for me. I like this. I like this a lot. So what I don't like is actually having this part light while it's in the background. So let's select everything. Let's select all these two blue shapes, and then I want to play around with the gradient again. Yeah, this looks good for me, but feel free to work with the gradients, and play around with them as you please. So thank you guys a lot for watching. I hope this was helpful. I tried to squeeze in some tips and tricks in terms of working with Illustrator, as well as picking colors and things like that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Please make sure to go to our channel and subscribe. Maybe you can find another kind of tutorials that are also helpful for your creative endeavors and whatnot. Again, thanks a lot for watching this tutorial, and I will see you in the next one.